It was a strange dream, is what one says to oneself upon awakening from a vivid experience. Sometimes dreams gnaw at you. Perhaps sequences return to you throughout your day. This wasn't that kind of dream. This was the kind of dream which is merged with reality, and your recollection of it is just as stark. I had been so affected by that dream when I experienced it that the next day I needed to write to my best friend and tell him about it. When I had dreamed of the future moment of being in my ex-wife's uncle's backyard, to separate that dream from the actual memory of being there in reality is quite complex. Similarly, the dream where I dreamed of hell feels just as real. It would not be possible to mention this dream at all were it not for a television interview I had seen online several months later, after my ex had left. Otherwise, the complete lack of corroboration to this experience and the fantasy of a personal dream make it impossible to repeat with value. The television interview was an American evangelical show about a man who had survived an horrific plane accident where half his body and face had been disfigured by the wreckage. He had died at the crash but was later revived. He was explaining to the minister on the show how he had been taken to hell by shadow beings, which had come out from the shadows. When he was asked to explain what hell was like, he used the exact words, "You would not wish hell upon your worst enemy." I had been listening to this interview whilst at work after hours. I'd inherited a lot of work to do in this new job. My wife had left, and the isolation of those nights in a large skyscraper was very dark and cold. During this time, I'd been doing a lot of Tantra yoga and reading from the Bible. The interview had come on via my feed after I'd been listening to the Gospels on audiobook in the background. I had not really been paying attention, and when I heard the man utter those words, I halted what I was doing, shocked. This was because when I dreamed of that place called hell, the way I explained it to my ex that morning in bed, and to my best friend as I wrote to him, was that the only way I could describe it was to say that you would not wish it upon your worst enemy. The way this dream happened was as follows. The day earlier, my ex had told me that the nightmares I kept having were keeping her awake. It had started before we had come to Germany and was growing in frequency. This struck me as unusual because I was unused to nightmares and I hadn't remembered any. She said each night for the past weeks I had been waking her up from my nightmares, and only then did a vague memory of wakening on mornings in a panic state return to me. I asked her to wake me up when I was having these nightmares, so that I could understand what was happening. She had woken me that night and said, "Babe, you're having one of those nightmares. Remember you told me to wake you?" In that dream, something had come up to me and started attacking me. Maybe 3 or 4 beings. It was hard to be able to see them clearly. They approached me from outside my vision. I was still asleep and experiencing that dream when she woke me, and so I slipped back into the dream state easily. I perceived 4 men in front of me whom I started to follow. They were dressed in soldier khaki. One of them was a general or a kind of leader, and the 3 others were his charge. I was in a land of rolling green hills. These 4 wreaked devastation on the land as they passed through, setting things on fire and delighting in waste. One of them saw me following them, which they each became aware of as they travelled onwards. Eventually I came to a town where a dirt road passed through the middle of the village. There was a well in the centre of that road. Those 4 had gone down into the well. And there was a man beside the well. He had long brown hair, and the fabric which clothed his upper body was a cream colour. He looked to be in his late 20s. He was very calm and gentle. "You know you don't have to go down there," he said. "I know," I replied, climbing into the well. His eyes were very brown and looked deeply into mine. The 4 I had been following seemed to jump straight down, whereas I needed to climb down slowly. It felt like a series of tunnels or networks within the dark which went downwards a long way, and at some stage I needed to travel at a great speed. I arrived in a cavernous place and it was red and glowing. I could see the general and the 3 soldiers moving away towards the left along an earthen path or bridge that was above a vast sea of souls before me. So wide and endless it is impossible to say its breadth. These souls were in agony and utter agony. This only seemed like the beginning of it. When I looked out into that sea of souls, it felt like the souls of people like Napoleon were inside there, wreathing with the pain like on fire, but only much improbably worse. The horrors were such that my mind was unable to grasp what I was looking at. They were so terrifying it was beyond my comprehension. I had forgotten all about those soldiers I was following. As I looked out upon a sea of agony and suffering, something sympathetic twigged inside of me and I began to feel sad. At this point, I began to feel myself descend into the sea. There was nothing to be done. I could not seem to free myself. It felt like before then I'd been able to fly. The sea of souls seemed to regulate itself and seethe. I looked upward in desperation, but at the same time finding difficulty to comprehend that I was sinking into the sea. I then noticed something above me, which moved like the coolness of a breeze that went over the place. Above me was a man, who again had long hair. He was similarly dressed to the man I had met outside the well. He was angelic and had knowledge. In my dream, he gathered me in his arms and lifted me out of that sea. He saved me from that sea of hell. How long, how many eons long within that dream might I have been there otherwise? And I was brought back to the place beside the well where I had climbed down. It seemed that it was a place for demons, which sometimes humans go to. For demons it is their home, for humans it is their hell. I do not want to go back there. Now there were 3 or 4 people around me. I think they had long hair as well, and they were also peaceful. They explained to me that the soul is immutable God's presence. The soul itself cannot be destroyed, and that it is the soul which chooses its way. The analogy they gave was pottery. They said that when the pottery was not good, it had to be returned to the kiln and to be refired. Only the soul could choose. I then awoke back in Germany in my ex-mother's apartment. It took a few days before the experience left the forefront of my mind. My dream of World War III happened when I came back home a few months after. Waking into the moment there where I am living in that apartment with my ex and the little memory of our tiny life, the feelings of sky and billowing curtains and morning sunlight.
The occurrence of DMT in our brains, in our bloodstream.